When I initially saw Lens Island, I was entrenched, excited. I could not wait to play this game. Oh my gosh, I had missed the demo initially, and I scoured the internet. I was trying to find any way to play it. I actually looked at ways to go back in time with Steam to when the game was available as a demo to download it. Now, Lens Island is in early access, and the question is this worth the wait? Now, when I was looking at what category to put this into, I was thinking, do we put it into a farming sim? Do we put it into an action RPG? Do we put it into a dungeon diver? And I'm going to rank this game as a dungeon game. Now, as a dungeon game, Lens Island suffers a little bit. Now, the core focus is around the farming aesthetic with some city building with a dungeon thrown in. It's a bit of an odd blend because the game seems like it really wants to lean into the dungeon aspect with the weapons you can find, the enemies that you can fight. There's a huge tech tree to basically have new weapons, like axes, spears, picks, swords, all kinds of different stuff to fight off these weird enemy shadow creatures, as well as these like odd crab creatures. Now, when the game really starts to fall apart when you actually go into the dungeon. It's really dark and barren. It's one cavern, and there's a lot of monsters scattered about, but it's a really weird design aesthetic because it's not fun to explore, and it's also very confusing where you are in the actual dungeon itself. And what I mean by this is the entire pathway is dark. You can use up some of the items you find to basically light torches. And I kind of get the idea that that is supposed to be how you navigate through it, kind of giving yourself a breadcrumb trail back. This would work, but there's no real sense of this is where I'm going, because you end up lighting up so many different torches. But moving that aside for now, let's go on to what the combat in this game is actually like. And the combat isn't bad. You do have a feeling of weightedness to your attacks. You can dodge, defend, do all that kind of stuff relatively easy. The enemies themselves are kind of weird. Now, you have mostly shadow creatures, and some of these range from like bug size, where they're little tiny creatures, to, oh my gosh, this is like the size of a freaking gorilla charging at me. And they all kind of have this very similar coming at you technique. They will follow you through this entire dungeon, it seems like indefinitely. Even if you do find secret ways around, somehow they manage to find you. And it didn't bother me. The creatures are okay. Fighting them's fine. It just seems like you're kind of doing it. There's no real reasoning, it seems like, but you know, they're blocking your stuff, you need to get it, and that's fine. The other big issue I have is when you're in this dungeon, it doesn't really feel like there's a purpose to you being in this dungeon, because, well, there's just nothing exciting about it. You can find some items like mining spots and some crates, but there's not really a sense of big treasure that you're trying to achieve. And that kind of hurts the game a lot. Now, when I'm fighting some of these bigger creatures, this is the tactic that I have found unfortunately works. You basically just end up gobbling a bunch of food berries while you're fighting them. It's very similar to Skyrim, and it's not nuanced enough to make the combat with this dungeon work. So overall, I think Lens Island tries to bridge this weird dungeon crawler with a farm, but it kind of fails, honestly, at both. And I do think that the dungeon portion of this game needs to further develop, and hopefully it does as early access goes along. But for now, this unfortunately sits at a relatively low score.